Blog Talk Radio.
Provided by bensound.com. Welcome, everyone, to today's Earth Energy Forecast Show on this Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. Thank you for tuning in today, or if you're listening later to the podcast. I am your host, Joan Cerio. Well, happy July 14th, le 14 juillet, Bastille Day, for all of you listening from France. Thank you for tuning in. And I hope you're doing well. I hope everyone is doing well. We're still so much into this pandemic, and I wish everyone well. Today we're going to switch gears quite a bit and talk about something else that really is in line with what the show is all about. We all know that our Earth is changing. We see it every day. We know the weather patterns are changing, and our weather seems to be getting worse. Whenever we get storms, they seem to be more severe. So today's guest is going to talk about his documentary, which is a film that explores why we place cost over safety while technology exists to build homes capable of withstanding hurricanes, fires, and tornadoes. And we're going to bring on film writer, producer, and director George Siegal to the show. George began his career in front of the camera as a newscaster, sportscaster, and weathercaster. He worked in markets from Los Angeles to San Francisco, Seattle, Detroit, and San Antonio, Texas. In addition to work in front of the camera, George was a feature reporter and producer. He made numerous appearances and speeches on behalf of the stations he worked for and hosted the Jerry Lewis Telethon. In 2001, he formed JEL Productions, a video production company that produces commercials, infomercials, television programs, and documentary films. George's clients love the fact that he completed their projects on time and on budget. The company also created their own original programming, which included a Texas travel program and a building and remodeling show. George is most proud of his latest venture, forming the nonprofit documentary film company Move the World Films Incorporated. He wrote, directed, and produced the award-winning documentary films The Last House Standing and Licensed to Parent. George, his wife Nancy, and their children live in Tampa, Florida. His website is thelasthousestanding.org, and you can reach him at George Siegal at movetheworldfilms.org. Welcome to the show, George. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about our film.
Yes, and we are definitely in changing times, and we know this. And this film is really, bringing to light what we should be talking about now. Not only the pandemic, but we've got so much going on right now. We really have to pay attention to a lot of different things, and I feel that this is one of them. So it sounds so interesting to me. About doing this documentary. You've worked in television for quite a while, then returned and done something else to this documentaries. Why did you make this particular film?
Well, this particular subject has been a subject that I care deeply about for years. When I was back in the news business, we used to have to cover disasters all the time, and we would go see these tragic stories of people that have lost everything. And I was always just heartbroken by those stories about the look that people had, the look of shock. They had no idea that it could happen to them. And it's that stunned look you see on their faces with the reality of what happened. And then as I got out of the news business and was working for myself, I lived in an area where we had weather issues from time to time, but I always loved Florida and was fascinated by it. So I ended up moving here. And then I've had this idea for making The Last House Standing for a number of years. The concept, which kind of evolved from, I don't know if you saw the movie Talladega Nights. It was kind of a funny thing with Ricky Bobby on there, where his dad always told him, if you're not first, you're last. And I thought, well, sometimes being last is a good thing. I want to be the last house on the block that's standing. Then Hurricane Michael hit, and there truly was one house left standing on the whole beach in Mexico Beach, Florida. So we went out and shot this film, and the rest is hopefully going to, start to make a difference.
Yes. So you've provided us with a couple of clips. I'd like to play one right now. And this one is about where to develop homes, weather, climate change, and all. It kind of gives a feel for what the documentary might be about. So I'm going to play that now.
I think that's an important question that we have to ask ourselves. In other words, where is the vulnerability so high that we should not be developing? Because when we develop in risky areas, it's not just that person there that is taking on that responsibility. It's the community that takes on the responsibility. So it's a liability for many more people, for society.
We have to recognize that, the United States sits on a portion of the globe that has the most dynamic weather patterns of anywhere else in the world. And, there's a risk living in this great country, and we have to figure out how to adapt and become resilient based on what Mother Nature throws at us.
I'm a scientist, and this discussion on climate change has become almost religious. From my point of view, when you look at the data, we have a direct impact on climate. You can argue about how much that impact is, but yes, our climate is getting more erratic. Climate change basically says as you increase CO2, you change your heating and cooling of the world, and we're seeing changes. Do I think that climate change is occurring? Absolutely. Scientifically, it is absolutely happening. It is not a religion.
So, George, as a former weatherman yourself, what do you think is causing these changes in weather patterns and the weather becoming more severe?
It's a combination of things, I think. Climate change it seems like it's almost become a political issue now and not a scientific issue. And the fact is, and the experts we talk to in the film, they all believe the climate is changing and it is having an effect on us. Now, you combine that with the fact, where do people want to live? They want to live by the beach. They want to live by the water. They want to live out in the woods. They want to live where they can have some land in the central part of the country where there are tornadoes. So we live in areas that are potentially the most vulnerable. So I think it's a combination of weather patterns are changing and becoming more severe, but we're also getting a tremendous amount of population in dangerous areas that are just becoming bullseyes for it when those storms actually hit.
Mm-hmm. And have you ever had any personal experiences with a weather disaster yourself?
I have, not quite as severe as the ones we cover in the film. When I was in college 100 years ago, my family lived in Pacific Palisades, which is close to Malibu, where the fires were this past couple of years. And our house caught on fire in one of those fires. I raced home from school to try to help my parents put it out. And fortunately, the fire department was able to save the house. When I was living in San Antonio, I had to go up to Oklahoma and cover a major tornado that hit Moore, Oklahoma. And I interviewed a woman who the only thing left on the slab of her house was her bathtub and the mattress that she held over her to protect her. Everything else was gone, scraped clean.
Wow.
I've covered a number of flooding stories where people have lost everything. And then now living in Florida, the hurricanes, as they whiz by us, we thought Michael could potentially hit us, and it ended up destroying another area. We've had a number of storms that are always close calls. So now we're living with that on an annual basis. So it affects us, but fortunately, and I'm knocking on some wood as I say that, not as bad as the people that we introduce you to in the film.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about this year's hurricane season? It's been fairly quiet. We just had a tropical storm go up the East Coast, northern sections of it. What do you think is going to happen? It's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, it's deceptively quiet, yet they also say it's the earliest in the season we've had this many named storms. I think we're 4 in. So if you factor in that it normally starts slow, but we have had, the experts are predicting an above normal season. And as people in the insurance industry or at FEMA will tell you, above or below normal doesn't really matter. If one hits you, it's the worst thing that could happen to you. So
exactly,
it's supposed to be more active. Yeah, it's supposed to be more active than normal, but I'm always on my guard now. It's scary when you see when you go visit what happened. Until you've actually been there and seen that, you just think it's not as real as when you're walking around seeing a street that looks like a bomb went off. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yes, and I've noticed that no matter what storm seems to come through, even here in the Northeast, like we got some rain the other day, it wasn't even a thunderstorm. It just dumped so much rain in a short period of time that there were some flooding issues. So yeah, you just don't know anymore what's going to explode. So what will it take for us to raise the bar on home building in this country then, to build homes that will withstand hurricanes or tornadoes or fires, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, there is. We can all certainly do a better job. If an F5 tornado or a Category 5 hurricane hits most people and you're directly in the path, sometimes that's just horrible luck, and then you hope you have insurance and we're able to evacuate. But not everybody lives in the bullseye. People live on the fringes of that, and there are stronger building codes that can be enacted and steps that people can take to make their house safer immediately. The problem is builders aren't going to do it on their own. Cities aren't going to do it unless they're told to do it by us. So the point of our film is I think it starts with the home buyer. We have to demand more. We have to expect more from the people that build our homes. I don't know how many people have had experience with builders. Some of them are great, hardworking, conscientious guys, but they're also business people, men and women, and they're going to try to make money on building a house. So that means you're not it's not really conducive to saying, I'm going to get the best of this, the best of that, unless they're told to do that. And if we don't know enough to ask for it, we're not going to get it. I have a concrete house on the first and second floor. Most of the houses built around me have wood on the second floor. That to me is mind-boggling, because people just want that because it's a better design. It looks different. It's just mind. I just don't understand why in a place like this down the street from us they're building an apartment complex out of wood. The entire complex is out of wood. And so even if you build a safe house, okay, where are all the ones that blow apart going to end up? They're going to come crashing into your house. So it takes a community effort, but individually we have to demand more. We have to put our foot down and say we want better. We demand better.
So then is it our responsibility, the public's responsibility, to provide safer homes so that we have the building codes changed and all?
Sadly, we're the ones that have to demand for it. Obviously, we're not going to know as much as a builder or the construction industry or people like that. But if we say, hey, the wind rating in our neighborhood is only 130 miles an hour, but a Category 5 hurricane has winds over 150 miles an hour, I want a safer house. I want concrete on both floors of my house. I want to make sure it's above the floodplain in my neighborhood. If we go in and ask for these things, you certainly do it now when you buy a car. If you go into the auto industry got it right. They said you have to have airbags. You don't think if it was optional on airbags, people would say, "Oh, I can save $1,000. Don't put the airbags in. I'll take the car with the leather seats." So a minimum standard has to be set by the building industry. But then as far as really stepping it up another level, we have to demand more. And if we don't, I don't think anything's going to change.
Well, do you think there's enough people that are willing to say that? Because it seems like, most people are complacent. It's just, human nature that, oh, everything's fine now. Like you said, it'll never happen to me. Are there enough voices yet, or what will it take?
I don't think there's enough voices yet. I'm hoping someday that when you go to Zillow or you go to Realtor.com, it doesn't just show you the houses that have the nice wood floors and the marble countertops. It shows you the houses that have a closed cell foam roof, that have concrete on both floors, that did extra things to make their home safer, and that's what gives the house more value, not the fringe things that are window dressing. It's the icing on the cake. We need to care more about the ingredients in the cake, and I think people have to demand that. You also can try to get your city government to enact stronger standards. I know they're trying to do that here in Tampa. They're trying to increase the building codes, and I certainly hope they do, because if a hurricane like Hurricane Michael hit here, the projections are over 500,000 homes and businesses would be destroyed. Hospitals would be, the downtown would be leveled because of flooding, of storm surge. So you don't want to wait till the disaster happens, but that's usually, unfortunately, what it takes in a lot of places. When Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida, well, after that, they have the strongest building codes in the country for hurricane prevention, and they've seen over the years that it actually makes a difference. It protects them because a lot of the structures in South Florida can withstand winds up to 175 miles an hour. So they're already ahead of the game. In the Panhandle, where Hurricane Michael was a Category 5 and clearly leveled all of Mexico Beach, they only changed the wind rating to 140 miles an hour. So sure, that's better than what it was, but I don't think it's enough. If they got hit again and rebuilt to 140, they would get wiped out again.
Mm-hmm. So why do people rebuild in the same area? If you've gone through such a devastating experience, you've lost your home and all, and you know that there's a very high risk it's going to happen again in a lot of these areas, whether it be, a fire-prone area or hurricane or tornado. Why do they rebuild there and not try to make it more sturdier or able to withstand these? Why do you think that is?
Did you ever see the movie The World According to Garp with Robin Williams?
A long time ago, yeah.
There was a scene in there where he was looking for a house with his family, and while they were standing there with the realtor, a plane crashed into the house. And Robin Williams' character says, "Honey, we'll take the house. Do you realize the odds of a plane ever hitting this house again?" And that's the mentality that people have when something bad happens. You go, it's like the lightning will never strike the same place twice. If my house flooded and it's a 1 in 100-year chance that it's going to happen, it'll never happen again. Well, Moore, Oklahoma had 4 major tornadoes hit that area. They've had 8 or 9 since over the last 20 years. So it can happen again. But I don't think that's human nature. You forget about things. You forget. Remember right after 9/11, we were applauding the fact that we were being checked going through security, and we didn't mind waiting longer because we wanted to be safe. A few months later, people are going, "Come on, the line's too slow. I want to get on my plane. Why are you checking everybody?" People forget. People just do not remember what happened to them or what bad happened, and then they go back to living their lives and think it's not going to happen again. Well, FEMA, is one of the things they talk about is there need to be rules in place that if your house is destroyed, you need to build it back better, or you shouldn't be able to build it back at all. You shouldn't, if you have a wood house sitting on a lot and it blows away in a hurricane, you should not be able to put that same house back there because it's not going to survive. You should have to build back better. And that's something that should automatically be required because who pays for these disasters? You and I do. Our insurance rates go up. Or insurance companies leave the state altogether. So we all pay for it. Somebody can be stupid, but we end up paying for it. So we all got to be smarter.
Yeah. So the banks and the insurance companies, should be saying no to certain things and not giving them the money.
Absolutely. There should be a Build Back Better. But there's also another side to that, too, which we learned in California. A lot of the houses in Malibu that burned down in the fire that we covered, they were homes that had been in somebody's family for years and years and years. So maybe they had no mortgage. They didn't have it properly insured. Well, over the years, the building codes have changed. And so if you didn't have a certain structure on your lot, you couldn't even build that again. You couldn't afford to. A lot of people who had houses couldn't even afford to put a foundation back where their house was. So in addition to having to build back better, everybody, after they hear this interview, go read your insurance policy and see what kind of coverage you have for your house. Make sure that you have things that are protected, because if you don't have proper insurance, building back is almost irrelevant, because the government's not going to pay to build back your house. They may give you a bridge loan to put you in a hotel or help you survive a few weeks, but they're not going to build your house back. So that's where we have to be on top of it. We have to know what our insurance policy says. Most people in Mexico Beach, Panama City, told us they never even read their insurance policy. They had no idea what was in it.
Wow. So as you were doing this film and interviewing people, I'm sure you probably researched FEMA and all. How much resources do they have? Because we've had multiple disasters happening simultaneously before, and I'm sure that's going to happen again. Can you really rely on them to help you in these circumstances now?
Well, you have to be realistic what you're relying on them for. We interviewed Brock Long, who was the FEMA director at the time, and he made it very clear to us that FEMA is not there to rebuild your house. They're there to come in after a disaster and help get things stabilized, help people maybe get a little jump start by providing some kind of funds, but they're not going to pay to build your home back. And they get stretched really thin. If they have fires and hurricanes and tornadoes, they can only be in so many places, and look how criticized they are over everything. Anytime there's a large entity, there's always going to be people, if it doesn't work for you, you're going to be very critical of how they operated. So there's things you can do to help make yourself in a better situation so they can help you. Because I had a friend who, in the tornadoes that happened recently in Tennessee, his house was destroyed. And seeing what it did to his life and how you're so turned upside down. And this guy has traveled all over the world as a cameraman in war situations where you're getting shot at and chased. He's been taken prisoner. Never experienced anything like what this did to his house. It's so disruptive. And so FEMA's role, they come in after a disaster and they're seeing the situation at its worst. What they want to try to turn to is more education, more preparing people up front. So businesses and cities and local governments have a better plan in place to handle things so they're not as reliant on the federal government to come in. If you're in the position where that's going to be your life-saving situation, you've got a problem, and it's not going to work out. So you need to do more on your own to be more prepared for it.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a really important point, George, because really we know that this is going to happen more and more. So I encourage people to become proactive and obviously watch your documentary. We're going to talk about that, how they can do that in a minute, and become more responsible for themselves. I think we're seeing that more and more now. You can't rely on the government to do everything for us. It's like, oh, well, you've got to take care of me. No, you're going to have to learn to take care of yourself.
That's very true. It's like if you're waiting for somebody to help you, you're just increasing the chances that you're going to become a victim of the situation. And there's things that people can start doing immediately that can be proactive steps to protect themselves. And if you don't do that, the situation's going to be worse. So I'll give you an example. Most people, if you were told you had 10 minutes, 15 minutes to evacuate your house, would you even begin to know what to take? If you don't plan for, they say if you're preparing for a disaster the day of the disaster, you have no chance. You need to have a plan in advance. You need to have a go box with a list of things, like if I had to grab stuff, where are my important insurance papers? Where are my family photos that I can never replace? Where are certain things that you have to take with you? Well, you don't do that when you have to run. You do that when it's a sunny day and you're just sitting around and you go, okay, I'm going to take pictures of everything in my house. So if my house was destroyed, I could actually prove to the insurance company that I had that big screen TV. that I had that really nice sofa. Because if your whole neighborhood gets wiped out and everybody's going down to get help, the person who's organized is going to get help first. You make it easy for them to help you if you can show them all the possessions that were lost. If you can show that your insurance company, you have your paperwork, you did all the things you needed to do. So there's things you have to do for yourself that will put you in a better position if God forbid something bad happens to you. Then you want to try to be as prepared as possible.
And doesn't FEMA have some information on their website on how to prepare for these disasters?
Absolutely. If you go to FEMA.gov, and if you go to thelasthousestanding.org, we have a page of resources for other places, Flood Smart. There's all these different websites where you can go. It'll help you identify what the risks are in your neighborhood, what a proper evacuation route might be. You can get suggestions how to possibly fortify your home. There's things you can do to make your roof safer, your front door safer. For as little as $300 or $400, you can get a hurricane blanket that goes on your front door, on the outside of the door, that can stop your door from blowing in a hurricane. Well, that can save your house. If the front door blows in, your whole house could get destroyed. But people don't know that because they're not thinking about it. You're just sitting there going, it's a beautiful summer in Florida. I'm just going to go to the beach every day and enjoy myself. Well, that works until the hurricane comes, and then it's too late.
So I'm imagining you have all of that for your home?
I do. And you know what? I went through a lot of last hurricane season without the pictures, but we just recently switched insurance carriers, and I went through and took pictures of everything. I have a good understanding of what my insurance policy is. I feel like we have a house safe enough that we would not have to evacuate. And boy, it's really difficult now if you have to evacuate with the coronavirus, because what if you have to go to a shelter with a large number of people? So now it's even more scary because you're not just having to go someplace else. You have to go someplace and be around so many other people. So what we really all have to hope for is that it's a very weak, nothing hurricane season, and then we can worry about it next year. But the reality is it doesn't usually work out that way. Somebody is going to get hit hard, and the people that are ready will be better off than the people who do nothing to prepare.
Yeah, we already had that earlier this spring with those tornadoes, and those poor people had to go into shelters, and we had the coronavirus. So, yeah, it compounds everything, the pandemic, it seems. So, and even getting supplies. My landlord is building another duplex next to me, and I've been told that it's hard to get supplies right now. So that's something else to keep in mind. I mean, if people are hit by a hurricane or fire and they want to rebuild, they may not be able to get the supplies right away.
That's true. This is it's scary on a regular basis, but this makes it so much more so, because what do they usually do in a lot of cities? If you have to evacuate, people go to large venues where they can put a few thousand people. And now you have all those people in one location. I don't even want to imagine that, but it doesn't on the surface seem like a very good scenario.
No. And sometimes what can you do at that point?
That's true.
Go ahead, George.
I was going to say that's why you want to be proactive, because the idea is to say, let's look at the worst case scenario. How can we avoid that? Or how can we increase our chances of avoiding that?
So I'm imagining that you interviewed a lot of people while you were making this documentary. What was it like interviewing people that lost so much in a disaster?
That's one of the most difficult things in this job, because you're sitting there asking people questions about things that are so personal to them. They're talking about the family heirlooms that they lost, about a house that their children were raised in that completely burned down, entire communities that were wiped out, and 80 or 90% of Mexico Beach was destroyed. A lot of people died there, so people all knew somebody who lost their life. It's very difficult to do that, but my job as the director of the film is to truly get to the core of what they experienced and have them share that with hopes people look at that and say, I don't want to be in that position. How can I do things differently so I don't end up like that? And, I'm very grateful to the people that were kind enough to talk to us, because I know it's very difficult for them in that situation. And I appreciate it. I think that hopefully what they said and shared with us will help other people avoid that situation. And it's painful for them, so it's difficult for them to do. So, you have to be sensitive to what they've lost, and at the same time, try to get the information that will help your film make an impact so other people can do better.
Yes. And we have a clip that you have with some people that have gone through these disasters. I'd like to play that right now.
We get disoriented driving down the road, and I've just lived here all my life. We don't have the trees for landmarks or buildings. It's sad.
They're gone. 80% of our city's destroyed. On October the 11th, in my walk down Highway 98, looking at our city, my thoughts were, how can 3 hours do this?
And you wake up, it's very strange, because there are things that you don't even think about when you lose everything.
We had a lot of antiques. The only one we saved was me. The old fart.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. So what happens to these people? Because I'm imagining a lot of them have PTSD, and emotionally they're just distraught. What kind of resources are out there to help them?
Well, some of them are more fortunate to have resources than others. The last gentleman you heard in that sequence is a 91-year-old man who literally lost everything. And his wife is 85. She suffers from dementia. They've moved around to a few different places, but 91 years old. I'll tell you something. That man has such a good attitude and a good spirit that you like to believe he'll be okay, because he doesn't let it keep him down. Other people we talked to woke up that morning, every possession gone, everything destroyed. And even if you are a person that has wealth, if you wake up and everything is gone right where you are, it's not like you're just running down to the store to buy new stuff. Where are you even living to put your stuff? It's that, one woman was telling us she couldn't even put on any eye makeup, anything on her. She had nothing, literally nothing. And then there's all the people in Mexico Beach and Panama City, Florida, that not only lost everything, a lot of those people were struggling before the hurricane hit. And then they had that wave of people that come in preying on victims that act like they're going to help you, and they're ripping you off. So criminal element that comes in, your house is destroyed, your roof is leaking. Some guy's driving down the road and says, hey, I can put a tarp on that for you. It's going to cost you $10,000. And then another guy says, yeah, I can rebuild your roof. It's going to be $20,000. Sign your insurance over to me and I'll fix it. And then you never see him again. It's disgusting. Yeah. The tragedy brings out true heroes in our society, and it also brings out the worst people that see it as an opportunity to make money off of it. And so there are people that do great things and help, and there's a lot of people that don't, and they're there to rip you off. And so you just feel for those victims, especially in the Panhandle. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, it's just it looked like a bomb went off and just blew up everything, and it just, I don't even know how they're going to rebuild that. You know, that's 5, 10, 15 years down the road. They may still be putting that back together.
Was that from Hurricane Michael? Is that what you're referring to?
That was Hurricane Michael, Category 5 hurricane. That, you know, it was a late season storm too. You know, that's one of the things we talk about, global warming and storms intensifying. That went from a Category 2 to a Category 5 almost overnight. So a lot of people thought they could stay and ride it out, and then they didn't think they were riding out a Category 5. You know, Floridians are tough people. They think Category 2, that's nothing. We can have a party around that. but it turns into a Category 5, it gets very serious.
So you toured the area after the hurricane hit?
Yeah, we went up there, I think 3 or 4 weeks after it hit, and we interviewed a gentleman who owned the last house standing, and we went around and talked to a bunch of other folks. And then we went up there a few months later, and they had done some cleanup, but I think the annual budget for cleanup in Mexico Beach is $3 million, and they spent over $50 million by the time we were there. Panama City was expecting to have to lay off over 600 teachers. People were moving out and not telling anybody, so the whole economy, I think 50% of the businesses were shut down because of it. I mean, the consequences of a large storm like that are overwhelming, and you don't think about it. I was listening to an interview, read an article by Roy Wright, who's in our film. He's the CEO of the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, and he talks about, okay, you have a nice beach community that gets hit by a hurricane. Those people that own those beach houses probably have a home somewhere else that they could go back to, but a few miles inland are all the people that were the support people for that maybe were the gardeners, the landscapers, the people that ran the restaurants, and the waiters, the waitresses. Well, those people all get wiped out. They don't have anywhere to go. That was the only place they had. So, you see the face of the nice things that are destroyed, but it's all the other people that are affected by it in the area that have mold and water halfway up the walls in their house. The restaurant they were working in is now closed. Their lives are turned upside down, and those, it's just really sad to see that, because the coverage is usually right along the coast, but it's just a little bit on the other side of that where usually the people are suffering the most.
Yeah, and it's not only the homes that are getting destroyed, it's the businesses too. So not only do people lose their homes, they lose their livelihood.
It's true. You think of, they said in Mexico Beach, they didn't have a bank, they didn't have a grocery store, they didn't have a gas station. There were some bed and breakfast, some hotels there. All those places probably closed for good. So now imagine the bartenders there, the waiters, the waitresses, the cleaning crew, the gardeners, all the people that kept that place going now have nothing. So where do they go? That's the story just gets sadder if you think about that.
So what do we do about the money issue then, George? Because here's the thing. A lot of the municipalities and the state governments are broke now because of the pandemic. What happens if there's a big disaster? What are we going to do?
Well, I read something the other day that said some cities or states or counties rather are considering majorly raising their property taxes because they don't have any money. So once again, who are the rich guy is going to be able to afford to pay that increase?
Wow.
But the guy that's paycheck to paycheck that took out a mortgage on his house and is struggling, all of a sudden you tell him you got $5,000 extra you got to come up with for your taxes. That's a great question. I don't have the answer to that. I think that this is going to be every year is challenging for disasters. I think it's going to be compounded this year by the virus.
Yes.
And the fact that so many people are strained to begin with. Everybody's hurting right now to begin with. So if you put more on top of that, I have no idea how that's going to go. I that's why I hope it doesn't happen, but it probably will.
Yeah, I know that governments are pretty busy handling the pandemic, and I would encourage them to think about this, really. I mean, they really have to pay attention. I know I lived in an area that was prone to flooding, and it was a very seasonal place, and there was a lot of pull-behind trailers or, mobile homes and campers, and we're starting to get tornadoes up here and floods happen. And I'm like, there needs to be a place for these people to go because it's not safe to be in there. And I don't think that municipalities are taking this seriously enough and planning for these things. I mean, I think we, as citizens, we must demand that from our local governments at least to start budgeting for this and planning for it.
That's so tough to do, though, when you think about how the country's so divided, you can't get people to agree on anything. If I say the sky's blue, you might say it's gray. If we can't get past that, how are we going to solve more serious issues? You know, you have to. It's heartbreaking when you see people that are displaced from their homes, and where do they go? And if they need someplace to go, how do you pay for it? You know, that's a different film. I don't have the answer for that one, but
yeah, I know, because
it's heartbreaking to think about.
Yeah, I had Stefan Schwartz on, and he does remote viewing, and his remote viewers were seeing like all of these refugees within our own country, that we would have all these people being displaced in the U.S. here.
Well, when we were out in LA
say that again, George?
When we were out in LA shooting Malibu for the film, we went and drove the part of downtown LA where the tent city area is, where people are living on the streets, and it's like being in another country. I mean, when you see, it was an unbelievable sight to see. And now imagine that if there was an earthquake there. Imagine that in an area where a tornado or a hurricane hit. I mean, it's tough enough when you lose your house. If you're outside when that happens, I can only imagine it would be worse. So there's some really bad things going on right now, and you know, hopefully weather disasters will not add to that.
Yeah, hopefully, and we are in that time, and I know NASA and a lot of the scientists are saying that Sun Cycle 25 is supposed to be calmer, and we're supposed to be heading into grand minimum, but there's other reports to say the opposite, and I know that Sun is starting to get more active, and as that does, then the weather gets more active here. So I'm really hoping that, you know, things stay calm. But I think these are all things that we need to talk about.
Definitely. You know, one of the scientists we interviewed in the film, Jennifer Francis, says disasters are definitely getting worse and happening more often. And she says the oceans are warming, the atmosphere is warming, and that's causing storms to stall out, like with Hurricane Harvey in Florence that stopped and dropped 40 inches of rain. The storms intensify faster. They stay because the water's warmer going up the East Coast. They stay stronger, longer in that direction. When you have droughts on the West, there's more to burn. And so there's greater danger for fires. And, you know, Paradise, California, I think there's only 2 roads out of that area. And it was overbuilt in a wooded area. And look what happened when a fire went through that area. It just was devastating for Paradise, California. So one of the people, FEMA director, told us that was the worst disaster he's ever seen, was Paradise, California. So, you know, every area has its downsides. You know, maybe where you are is safer. I used to live in San Antonio. We were in a pretty safe spot there. But if you want to live in an area that has all the bells and whistles, there's usually some things that make you a bullseye along with it.
Yeah, every area has its drawbacks. I mean, you know, we get blizzards here. You know, you lose power in a blizzard, it's not a good thing. And you don't have an alternative heat source, and you can't get out of your home, it's not good. I grew up in the blizzard of '66, and I remember, I mean, I was a kid then, but, you know, the snow is, I can't tell you how high it was, way over the cars, way over. I mean, we had big tunnels and all, and, you know, that can happen again. So you never know. And it's important to be prepared.
You want to look at what you want to do is have a good understanding of what the disasters are that could occur where you are and make a plan for it. And the time to make that plan is well before the disaster. And if you name the place and the disaster, there are certainly things in every one of those situations that you can do. And we make the point in the film that most of the people could have done something that are in our film. They might have been able to do something that would have increased their chances. There's sometimes you can't do anything. So maybe the thing you could have done was get your valuables out of the house or have a better insurance policy. So it doesn't mean you're always going to be able to completely save everything, but it's going through the process of figuring out a plan. So if it was to go south on you, how you lose less than you would if you had no plan at all.
Yes, yes. So, George, how can people watch your documentary?
Well, the best thing to do, because we're in the process of working on how we're going to have it distributed, and we're thinking it'll be sometime in the mid to late fall, the best way is to go to our website, thelasthousestanding.org, and on the homepage there's a form on there that you sign up for so we can give you the date. And we're not going to send you information and market you anything. I truly want people to see the film. So what we'll do then is we'll let you know if it's going to be on such and such a channel or such and such a video on demand or where it's going to be available on the internet. We will be able to tell you directly if you go to our website and sign up. And that's the best way. And then the second best way will be I'll get back to you, of course, and let you know when I know. But short of that, if people go sign up, they can for sure follow us and get to know when the film's going to be on.
And is this going to be something that they'd have to look on, through the internet, or is this something that's going to be on, nationwide TV? Are you going to try to, get it out there in that way?
I'm trying everything. It's when you're in the broadcast of the business and when you're making films, it's very competitive. So you want to try to get your film in front of as many people as possible, and that's a long process doing that. We think we have some good things in the works, and that it will be available for everyone to see. That's our goal.
Well, and I hope that you reach that goal. Yeah, I understand that. I have a friend that's a writer, and he's written screenplays of his books, and it's a trilogy. Well, actually, he's going to write another one, so it'll be 4 books now. But, yeah, he's been trying to get it out there for a while as a movie, and it would be great if it did get out there. But I realize how competitive it is, and now that people can't go to the movie theaters, it just puts another twist onto everything, doesn't it?
It does, because if you were, say you're a film like ours and you were hoping that maybe you would, it would be available on Amazon, well, all the Hollywood films that people can't go to the theaters are now going to be on those other venues. So everybody gets pushed down the ladder of the ripple effect of a tragedy is so many different people are affected by it. We can't go out and shoot new stuff because it's not safe. So the production industry, the film industry, really takes it in the chops on this. But it then makes you think there's people that have it a lot worse than we do. But it is a challenge for everyone.
Yeah, and so I'm certainly hoping that things will quiet down with the pandemic. Maybe next year. Doesn't look like this year, right now anyway. Not for a while. We'll see what the fall brings. And hopefully it won't get any worse with the regular flu. Compounding things.
Yeah. And, oh, by the way, flu season's coming up. I know. It's like, what's next? So
no, don't ask. Don't ask, George.
I know, because that's when it'll happen. But as we're saying, let's hope there's no major hurricanes or, tornadoes or fires. But there's already a fire right now, I think, in Colorado. There's a big fire in the mountains there that's burning. I'm sure we're going to see more fires on the West Coast.
Oh, yeah.
And definitely, I think over the next few weeks, especially as we get into early August, that's when you're going to see things picking up in hurricane season. And that's when we all have to be on our guard. So if there's things you can do now is the time to do it. Now is the time to catalog your items. Now's the time to know your insurance and make sure you have everything. If you live in an area where it's going to burn down, where your house could burn down, what things do you want to take when the disaster hits and you have to get out? Make that plan now. You feel silly doing it, but you won't feel so silly that day when you're the one that's prepared and you're the one that says, yeah, I saved my child's baby pictures and the videos of my grandparents. You can't get that stuff back. Even if you have insurance, it doesn't get back a lot of things that mean the most to you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, is there anything else you want to share with us today about your documentary, or anything else that we should know and prepare for?
Well, I really want people to see this film. I think that what I tried to bring to this documentary is not only talking about a problem, but show that there's solutions to it. A lot of documentary films take something and they show you that these poor penguins or these birds migrating or the salmon that are dying, and the person sitting at home can't do anything about that. Maybe you're going to eat a little less salmon, but they're beautiful films, but you can't do something about it. Our film, we can all do something about it. We can all start demanding more from builders and people that are selling their houses. We can want to know more information about it to know how safe it is, because we're going to end up paying for it if we're the ones that buy it. So this film shows that, yes, there's a major problem we have to deal with, but there's also a solution. And if we all start doing something about it, we can demand safer homes. And that's going to save billions of dollars and countless lives with something that is achievable. This is not, putting a man on Mars and maybe, 50 years from now something will come of that. This is something we can start doing today.
Yeah, something very practical. And already we've had a really hot, dry summer. We just had some rain recently, but it's been hot and dry, and that's probably the way it's going to be because Mars is in Aries, and so there could be a lot more fires. So I just want to put that out there for people, and I hope that there's not droughts, but we don't know. We go through these huge shifts, and it's either dry, it's too much, it's not enough, and you're right. We need to prepare now. And where can people get these hurricane blankets? Do you have that on your website, George?
That particular one, that you would have to Google it. They are available in Florida. There's a number of companies. There's a few places that sell them. I don't have the name at the tip of my tongue, but I got one for my front door, and I think it cost me $440. And what they do is they screw holes around the frame, the concrete frame around the door jamb, and then you would take the blanket and screw it in all around the door, and it's supposed to withstand winds up to 175 miles an hour. So I felt a vulnerable area in my house would be the front door potentially blowing in. I took that out of the equation. So if people Google hurricane blanket or hurricane fabric, I notice them now more when I'm walking around the neighborhood. I never looked for it, but you see screw holes around all the windows. It's because you can put them on every window in your house.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
And that, that's something that can really make a difference. The two areas, if the front door goes in or your garage blows in, that can destroy an entire house. So it's a good item to have. It's not that expensive, and it's something you could do pretty quick. I would recommend having a professional install it, though. When you're drilling holes around your door, there's a lot more damage you can do than good if you don't really know what you're doing, like me.
Right, yes.
Well, yeah, there's people that do that better. I'll get them.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, George. This has been really enlightening about what's going on and what we can do. And you're right. There are things that we can do about it, and we need to prepare now. And we really need to start thinking about things because you're right. Things aren't going to get any easier in the weather department. So thank you so much for coming on, George. And I wish you well with the documentary.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And it's thelasthousestanding.org, and we'll let people know when the film's on. I'll get back to you and let you know, but I appreciate you having me on to talk about it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, George. So we've come to the end of another show. Next week, it's our time for Loving the Earth Day with Jane Reading and myself. And next week, we're going to talk about calming anger. Talk about Mars and Aries and things heating up. We're all heating up. It seems like tempers are heating up. So we're going to talk about that. So I hope you tune in then. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Please, when you go out in public, wear a mask. Do it for yourself. Do it for your neighbors. Do it because you love one another, because we are all part of one family. Wash your hands. Stay well. Much love, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.